I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.
See the water deluge
Stage
beginning in
now
there now.
Pressurized. 35 seconds and counting. We are still go with Apollo 11. 30 seconds and counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Oh boy.
Let's go, all engines, roger.
Oh boy, it looks good, Wally.
Roger tower. Roger tower. Roger, we got a roll over. Like fire, going the update. Roger.
Building shaking. We're getting that buffeting we've become used to. What a moment. Man on the way to the moon.
Fine, how you Vietnam? Roger,
Looks like a good trajectory so far, doesn't it, Wally?
Very good, very good.
That's
Roger, how you Brewster? I don't like very one thing, Captain.
beautiful. Downrange 1 mile, altitude 3, 4 miles now. Disappeared in the sun there too. Velocity 2,195 feet per second.
Everything fell into place.
Still fit?
Yes, indeed.
Red line is lit.
Oh, there we're starting the contract now.
See it beautifully.
No difference.
See it beautifully on the
Everything just go right.
on the screen here. We're through the region of maximum dynamic pressure now.
Yeah, everything looks good here. We're at 1350 in the start bar.
8 miles downrange.
I'm not
12
sure whether I'm a
miles
fan
high.
of looking at it on the screen or looking at it out the
4,000
window.
feet per second.
Earth as viewed from the spacecraft in the eastern Pacific Ocean. We have not been able to visually pick up the Hawaiian island chain, but we can clearly see the western coast of North America, the United States, the San Joaquin Valley, the High Sierras, Baja California, and Mexico down as far as Acapulco and the Yucatan Peninsula, and you can see on through Central America to the northern coast of South America, Venezuela and Colombia. I'm not sure you'll be able to see all that on your screens down there.
Engine fires for 12 minutes.
Just thinking, I think this is the first burn in the vicinity of the moon that's on this side.
Okay, sequence camera coming on.
First descent propulsion system burn on this side. Right,
No,
there
any burn of any magnitude at all. Let's see, all of our corrective burns were on the back side of the moon.
Oh yes, that's right. On Apollo 10, they came on up to apogee and then fired
Yes.
to go into the. That's right. And by that time, they're on the far side again.
Eagle Houston, if you'd like to try high gain pitch 212, yaw 37, over.
This is the International Arrivals Building, Kennedy Airport, with a big display board there. They see these
down
pictures.
now to 1,200 feet per second. You're looking
This
great,
is Disneyland.
Eagle Houston, we see you on the steerable, over. Roger, Eagle, contact. Roger, how does it look? The Eagle has wings. Roger.
Okay, all flight controllers, go for landing. Retro.
Go.
Fido.
Go.
Guidance.
Go.
Control.
Go.
Telcom.
Go.
GNC.
Go.
Ecom.
Go.
Surgeon.
Go.
Capcom, we're go for landing.
Eagle Houston, you're go for landing, over. Roger, understand. Go for landing. 3,000 feet. Copy. Alarm. 1201. 1201. Roger, 1201.
1201 alarm.
Same type, we're go, flight.
Okay, we're go.
We're go. Same type. We're go.
Flight Fido right on, real good.
2,000 feet. 2,000 feet. Into the ag, 47 degrees. Roger. 47
How's our
degrees.
margin looking, Bob?
It looks okay, we're
Okay.
about 4.5.
Roger.
Eagle looking great. You're go.
Altitude update in the eggs, looks good.
Roger.
Roger, 1202. We copy it.
How you doing, Control?
35 degrees.
We look good here, fine.
Roger. How about you,
35
Telcom?
degrees.
Go. Guidance, you happy?
Go.
Fido.
Go.
23. 700 feet, 21 down. 33 degrees. 100 feet down at 19. 540 feet down at 30 and at 15. 60 seconds. Lights on. 6. Down 2.5. Forward. Forward. At 40 feet down 2.5. Picking up some dust. 30 feet, 2.5 down. Straight shadow.
Stand by for 30.
4 forward. 4 forward. Drift into the right a little.
30.
30
Down
seconds.
a half. 30 seconds. Forward. Just. Good. Okay. Contact light. Okay, engine stop. ACA at a descent. Mode control both auto. Descent engine command override off. Engine arm off. 413 is in.
We've had shutdown.
We copy you down, Eagle.
Okay, everybody, T1. Stand by for T1.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
Ooh. Oh, boy.
Thank you. You're looking good here.
What?
Okay, we're going to be busy for a minute. After arm on, take care of the defense. I'll get this stuff prepared.
Wally, say something. I'm speechless.
I'm just trying to hold on to my breath.
Let's go to Houston. They're in conversation with the Astros. I hear everything but that. Houston, this is Tranquility. We're standing by for a go for a cabin deep press. Over. I'm at the foot of the ladder. The 11-foot beds are only depressed in the surface about 1 or 2 inches. Although the surface appears to be very, very fine-grained as you get close to it. It's almost like a powder. Ground mass is very fine. I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
July 20th of this year will mark the 50th anniversary that Apollo 11 set foot on the moon. Chances are you probably know someone who was there either on July 16th, when the crew of Apollo 11, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins set foot on that Saturn V rocket that was the most powerful thing ever built by man and launched up to the heavens. Either they must have seen it on TV or they were there at Cape Kennedy when it lifted off. Or July 20th, when they actually landed on the moon. Maybe they saw it at home with their parents, or maybe they just happened to be walking down the street and they saw a bunch of people standing around a TV store and decided to watch along with them. Or maybe they heard about it in the newspaper. Chances are, no matter who you are, you at least know someone who was there on those 2 days that made history. When I was a kid, I wasn't just interested in weather and Thomas the Tank Engine. I was also interested in space exploration. Planets and stars and galaxies and boarding a spacecraft up to the heavens and seeing what else is up there. I was interested in that kind of stuff. I was pretty much interested in the whole technique of it all. And I don't know what started it, whether it was Apollo 11 or maybe it was something else. Whatever it may be, I was interested in that kind of stuff. And to be quite honest, I don't think that any kid, no matter who they are, would be interested in space exploration if it hadn't been for Apollo 11. Apollo 11 set the standard for space exploration today. In fact, the history of Apollo 11 goes as far back as even the late 50s. The Soviet Union and the United States were in a war to see who could conquer space first, to see who can put a man up there, who can go to the moon first. The Soviet Union had already put Yuri Gagarin up in space first, making him the first man to walk in space. The history of Apollo 11 and pretty much the moon in general goes as far back as even the late 1800s, when Jules Verne wrote a story called From the Earth to the Moon. And then in the 1900s, where George Méliès's famous film, A Trip to the Moon, pretty much opened up people's minds about actually going to the moon. And maybe it wasn't his film entirely, maybe it was something else. But as far as history can remember, humanity has always been interested in the stars. Humanity has always looked up at the heavens to see what else is out there. What else is up there besides where we are right now? Everyone has wondered that. From Galileo Galilei, who discovered Jupiter, to Nicholas Copernicus. So many great astronomers back in the Renaissance era have always wondered what else is out there. And, of course, one destination that seemed the most likely possible, most logical place to go was the moon. A lot of people had ideas about what the moon looked like. Were there any people living on it? Could we actually go there? And if so, how? Now, what I just mentioned about A Trip to the Moon, that was all sci-fi. Before, going to the moon or going into space in general seemed like a sci-fi idea. It seemed like it could never realistically happen. But then we discovered rocket power. And that's when we took the opportunity of actually going into space. Or at the very least, doing something with rocket power. Could we potentially put someone on top of it and shoot that person past the Earth's stratosphere and beyond? Well, the thought became a reality on October 4th, 1957, when the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1 up into space. Not long after that, almost a year later, NASA was formed. They created Project Mercury that really was more of a test to see if a person could potentially survive the harsh environments of space. Project Gemini was created primarily to see if another spacecraft can rendezvous with another vehicle. Both Project Mercury and Project Gemini, all those were tests to see if we could actually go to the moon. President John F. Kennedy really believed in it. He really believed in the space program and how far it could go. He had a dream that someone could actually go to the moon and return safely to the Earth. And everybody was trying to get at it. The Soviet Union and the United States were trying to see who can go there first. It wasn't until Project Apollo where it seemed like all the tests that they had done with Mercury and Gemini, it seemed like we could really do it. But then tragedy struck with Apollo 1, the one Apollo mission that never got off the ground. It seemed like we were never going to get there. But they persevered. And with Apollo 8, 9, and 10 becoming successes, Apollo 11 was destined to actually land on the moon. In fact, there was even the possibility that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, the two men who would actually set foot on the moon, would never come home. That possibility weighed heavily on people's minds. But thankfully that didn't happen. Why do we look back so fondly on Apollo 11? Why do we think about it all these years later? There is that, I believe it's because we were so invested in seeing another world besides our own. We had only heard about them in planetariums and science books, but we never got to see them, what it would actually look like. And that's where Apollo 11 came into play. Apollo 11 set the standard for where we would go next. There were more missions to the moon, including Apollo 12, 14, 15, 16, and 17. Apollo 13 never landed on the moon due to a situation that pretty much ended the whole mission entirely. But it was all thanks to Apollo 11, where everything that we had learned prior to Apollo 11 was worth it. To see if a man could handle being in the harsh environments of space. Could they handle zero gravity? Could they rendezvous with another vehicle in space? Could they actually walk in space? Could they actually live in the environments? It's one of those things that they had to learn first. Because you can't just say, oh, I'm going to go to the moon. Woo! No, you had to have a stepping stone. And that's where all the other tests came from. When Neil Armstrong said those famous words on the moon, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, billions of people were glued to their TV sets, making it one of the most watched events in the history of television. But what I think most importantly, it helped a lot of kids look up at the stars. A lot of kids were inspired by Apollo 11 and what they did. A lot has been said about it already. I don't think there's anything more I can really say. There are documentaries all over the place. I don't think there's anything more I can say about it, other than how I feel about it. But I do want to ask a question, why was Apollo 11 such a significant event? Because we persevered. We triumphed. We did the impossible. Hundreds of years ago, if somebody would tell you that they wanted to go to the moon, it seemed impossible, unrealistic. But now you can say that we've been to the moon. And supposedly from what I've been hearing, we might go back sometime around 2025. It's possible we might see the moon again. There was actually a really good film about it called First Man, which focuses on the life of Neil Armstrong, ranging from 1962 to 1969 with Apollo 11. Apollo 11 marked the beginning of an era. It marked the beginning of perseverance. It marked the beginning of doing more, expanding our horizons, maybe even living in space someday. It broke new ground. It changed a lot for the world. Space exploration has always been a universal language. It's always been a task. The people who are brave enough to board a rocket that, in the case of Saturn V, had enough horsepower to it would almost be the equivalent of a small atomic bomb. And right up to the heavens and to go, in the words of Star Trek, to go where no man has gone before. It seems it's crazy to think how far we've come in nearly 100 years. We even live up in space for long periods of time with the International Space Station. We had the space shuttle, and we're hoping to go further. I mean, satellites have been venturing into space for years. In fact, there were several satellites that were released to photograph the moon. In fact, a couple of small spacecraft actually landed on the moon to see what the moon felt like before humans could successfully land on the moon. It's hard to imagine now to think that the tragedy with Apollo 1, it seemed almost like it was impossible. It seemed like it would be impossible to actually go to the moon, but they persevered even with that, because space exploration, no matter how risky it is, we still go for it. Because we know deep down that we're all explorers. We're all searchers and explorers wondering where we belong in the universe, where we are as a society, what other worlds could we visit, what other interplanetary systems can we explore. Apollo 11 was the first step, and that's why I believe it was so significant, because it was the first step to achieving greater things. To think that nearly 8 years later, to think that 8 years before, when John Glenn became the first man to orbit the Earth, it seemed like the possibilities were there, but it was because of one man's vision, John F. Kennedy, who he was the one that dreamed that people could go to the moon and back, and a team of dedicated people at NASA who made it all possible. It was because the two combined is what helped us get there. And it's funny to think that when I was a kid, being invested with astronomy, and I still am to a certain degree, but there's so much that has been said about Apollo 11 that I don't think there's much more I can add. I think it was one of the reasons why I was so interested in astronomy, or at least one of them. There are multiple other reasons, because I love science so much. That was one of them, and it gave millions of kids the inspiration to dream big, to leave the bounds of Earth, and to orbit the Earth and see other worlds, and hopefully Mars at some point. But it was because of Apollo 11 that those first steps came full circle. When Alan Shepard stepped into his Mercury Redstone rocket and was in space for 15 minutes, to Apollo 11 being on the moon for an entire day, we took in those first steps. And Apollo 11 showed us that we can do it. We can do it if we're brave enough to explore, if we're brave enough to leave Earth and venture out into space. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins were brave enough to take that first step. And we can't thank them enough for helping us inspire to explore, for helping us understand that anything is possible. And also, it helped us look up at the skies. Apollo 11 helped us look up at night, and look at the moon, and look at our telescopes and see Saturn or Jupiter or Mars or even Venus. It was because of the extraordinary bravery that we actually are able to say that I love looking up at the skies at night and seeing constellations and planets and maybe a galaxy or two. I think that's another reason. Hey, I just realized another reason why Apollo 11 was so significant. But no, in all seriousness, Apollo 11, it made us stop and wonder where we are in the universe. That there are other worlds out there, so let's go exploring. We salute you, Apollo 11. Happy 50th anniversary. Good night, everybody.